Welcome to the Bowden Blitz SEC edition. I'm Joe Lisi, joined by former National Coach of the Year, Terry Bowden. Coach, round number 2 of the college football playoff are in the books. The SEC has one team standing, the Ole Miss Rebels. Just thoughts about what transpired in both SEC contests last week.
Well, again, you had the team that people didn't expect to go anywhere in the playoffs play lights out, led by a quarterback that really, I thought of all the weekend, he had the best performance of any quarterback on any of these teams. And then you had a team at Alabama that for the first time you're hearing people around Tuscaloosa and around football saying, boy, they look soft. And a soft Alabama is about the worst thing you can call Alabama when you look at their defense and what they could not do to stop the run and what they could not do to run. It's a different perspective now as we look at Alabama after their loss, and even Georgia. We've got to talk about their performance too, because Ole Miss exposed some things that I wasn't really recognizing. A lot of people didn't recognizing. I think Ole Miss exposed some things that they're having some big staff meetings, I imagine, today in Athens, Georgia as well.
Yeah, absolutely, and we can dive into that game right from the get-go. It was one of the most entertaining in round number 2. Ole Miss does win it 39-34. This was a team that just a week ago, Coach, had double digits on them to win a national championship. They were at basically a 17-1 number as we inch closer to the start of the game. They were as high in the offseason right before these games played out as a 22-1 shot to potentially win a national championship. But Trinidad Chambliss and this offense led by Charlie Weis, the offensive coordinator, sliced and diced Georgia's defense, especially in the second half. They trailed 21-12 at halftime. They made second half adjustments and they win it by 5 points. I mean, this team came prepared and they didn't miss Lane Kiffin, not at all, in this matchup.
No, they're playing better. They played their best game of the year and were phenomenal. It started with Trinidad Chambliss. He was lights out. They could not get Ole Miss off the field. He made play after play. He extended plays. He created plays. He flipped the ball out to a back in the flat. He made the deep ball throws. He's as accurate on deep balls as anybody I have seen. And that was the thing that probably made the biggest difference in the football game. To me, if you watch closely now, Georgia rushed, I think, for about as much as Ole Miss, but Georgia could not make any yardage on first down. It was always 2nd and 8 and 2nd and 9, and they ended up in 3rd and long and 3rd and long. But it was the offense of Ole Miss and what they did to the defense. You know, we saw Kirby Smart go for it on 4th and 4, down 3 points, 9 minutes left of the game. He had all 3 timeouts, and on his own 30-yard line, he went for it on 4th and 4. That tells me that the head coach doesn't believe his defense can get him off the field, because you want to punt that ball down and let your defense stop them and get a field goal at least to tie it up. But he took a chance. They scored, and although they came back, maybe he was right, because when you had to stop them the next time, they hit a bomb on the last 50 seconds of the game and went down the field, kicked a field goal to win the game. So Ole Miss, and you mentioned Charlie Weis along with Trinidad Chambliss, I think they both need to be talked about, because I thought it was a great job of play selection, especially that Chambliss never he got rid of the ball so quick. He never held on to the ball. They couldn't get to him to sack him because he got the ball out of his hands so quick they couldn't get any pressure on him.
No, you're right, and I agree. Charlie Weis Jr. called a fantastic game plan. He was aggressive. Yeah. That's the way you have to beat Georgia. We have talked about Georgia's struggles in back-to-back years, potentially with mobile quarterbacks. You look last year in the Alabama game, Jalen Milroe gave him some problems. The elusiveness and athleticism of Trinidad Chambliss was evident in critical third downs. He converted not 1 but 2 key third downs to put his team in a position to score points and win that matchup on Thursday night. The other factor, too, Coach, was twofold. One, you look at Georgia's offense. Throughout the regular season, they were converting 45% on third down conversions. You go back to the stats of that game, they only convert 3 of 13 on third down. You go back to the rushing attack. In game number 1, a game that they won by margin, by 8 points, in Athens, they pounded the rock for 221 yards on the ground. They ran the
Right.
football effectively with Nate Frazier in the first half. They get away from it in the second half, and really that ultimately allowed Ole Miss back in that football game. The other factor, and I want to get your take on this, is you look at the first matchup for Georgia, a game that they won by 8 points. Lawson Lucky, Oscar Delp, the tight ends, accounted for basically 16 receptions in that game, 3 touchdowns. They only had a combined 2 receptions for 32 yards, Coach, and 1 came on a fake punt. Why didn't they get the tight ends involved more?
Well, I would have to think that Ole Miss, who has now played them twice in one season, has had plenty of video to watch, know that whether it's this year or previous years, Georgia offense depends so much on that tight end that they found a way to either box him inside outside or play him tight man coverage or make sure that he wasn't the primary guy you could go to. I don't think their tight ends this year have had the numbers that they've had in the past years, but when they can't use their tight end in those situations, because that's the type of team that Georgia is, they're not as effective. But overall, I was going to say that even the running backs, because I love Frazier and I love the run, and Lacey. He's more explosive himself. He can get outside and inside. He even catch the football. I just think there are a lot of things that Ole Miss did. Georgia depends on getting the ball to that tight end and running the football. The reason their third downs were so bad was because they were always 1 or 2 yards on first down and put them in long yardage third down situations. That's not how Georgia plays football. I think they got outplayed and got outcoached in that football game.
Yeah, they did. And again, the deep ball, we always talk about having a very aggressive defense, right? How do you neutralize speed? You attack them vertically. And I think a lot of times we see offenses attack Georgia or some of the elite teams, Alabama, Ohio State, you name elite teams, right? They attack them sideline to sideline. They don't attack them vertically on seam routes or fly patterns down the field. That wasn't the case for Trinidad Chambliss. Every throw was threatening Georgia's defense at every level, and he was throwing frozen ropes. And that's the main reason why they were able to get back into that football game, because he was attacking Georgia outside the hashes and vertically that they just didn't have an answer for.
No, and the thing about it, he completed them. He was accurate. He didn't just throw them. He completed them. When Georgia did, they didn't do it as much. When they did go deep, the only time they worked was when they got a pass interference call. And they picked up 10 yards, whereas he was picking 35 to 45 yards, because I know he hit 3 deep balls, the one in the last 20 seconds of the game or 50 seconds of the game when they went down. He hit a deep ball on a 3rd and 5 that if you overthrow that one, it's no good. But it was a great play. And again, that's the difference. They attack you vertically with accuracy, with success. Georgia don't do it as well. And when they tried it, like I said, if there wasn't a pass interference, they got nothing out of it.
Absolutely. Again, we'll see exactly what happens for Ole Miss. They do have their now semifinal playoff game against Miami. We'll talk about that a little bit at the end of the show. We'll preview it to a little degree. Coach and I will be on next week breaking down all 4 teams and all 2 games of the college football playoff. Thoughts about Georgia? Coach, is the dynasty over in Athens?
No, but I think their staff meeting today. I don't know what their schedule is, but I think they probably are in that meeting today saying, "Oh, hey, men, we just got whipped by Ole Miss. They physically whipped us on defense, and they explosively whipped us on offense with their offense. They played better than we did. They made better decisions than we did. They were more versatile on offense. They called plays a little more imagination. I think they're looking to say, you know what, we better – it's not like Dabo, but I think they better look at having the best quarterback in the nation, the best players in the nation, and not just being the best coach in the nation."
We'll come back with Alabama next. All right, welcome to the Bowden Blitz. Joe Lisi and Coach Bowden breaking down round number 2 in the college football playoff for the SEC. Left off talking about the night game, the Sugar Bowl, Ole Miss's dominance over Georgia, 39-34. Another dominating performance took place in the Rose Bowl, but it wasn't Alabama. It was, in fact, Indiana. They laid 7.5 points in that matchup, Coach. They win it in style, 35-point win over Kalen DeBoer and Alabama, the worst loss in bowl history for the Crimson Tide. They failed to show up. Thoughts about that performance New Year's Day in the Rose Bowl?
Well, unfortunately, in a lot of ways, they did show up. They showed up with the same running attack they've had all year, which is non-existent. And that was the problem there. And I just think Indiana, again, they came out and they run that old Alabama style. They're going to run the ball. And it wasn't like knocking them off the ball terribly the first quarter, but they pounded and wore them down. It started getting more and more. Then they can go short yardage or good manageable throws. They had good passing game to mix with it. And it was a case of Indiana just running the ball until they began to overpower you to the ball. And by the second half, they were in control of that football. In fact, right before the second half, they went up 17-0. So again, the problem at Miami, and again, I don't know whether if you say it's true, but what they think, they're beginning to think and being talked about as being soft on defense, soft in the running game. And that's the worst thing you could probably say about an Alabama football team to Alabama fans is that they're soft. And that's the impression I think people get when they see Indiana overpower them, a team like Indiana, a school like Indiana. It really throws them in a whack, and it's going to be a tough offseason.
It really is. And we talked about, Alabama as a whole averaging 3.6 yards per carry, one of the worst rushing performances of an Alabama offense pre-Nick Saban. Also, when you look at it, Coach, just overall, they couldn't shut down the run consistently this year. Teams were able to pound the rock between the tackles. The physicality in the trenches looks much different under Kalen DeBoer than the mad scientist Nick Saban, and that's why he did win 6 national championships in Tuscaloosa. The other factor, too, Coach, I feel like second half adjustments. Outside the Oklahoma game this year, they haven't adjusted considerably, especially in big matchups. It started week 1 with Florida State. They were completely outclassed in that game. That was a team in Florida State that had only won 5 games in the regular season. And you talk about this team as a whole, granted, they're not going to potentially win a national championship the year after Nick Saban retires. But back-to-back 4-loss seasons for the Crimson Tide is basically unheard of in Tuscaloosa.
Yeah, but everything you do as the coach that follows Nick Saban, everything you do, the way you play, the decisions you make, everything is compared to Nick Saban. That's and be honest with you, that's what happened to 7 straight coaches after Bear Bryant won 6 championships, and that's where it is with Kalen DeBoer. And I'm gonna say, if you're from a different part of the country, the first thing you understand, and I learned this when I was at Auburn, would had Bo Jackson and that type of running attack, is that in Alabama, in the Deep South, and really if you're going to be a championship team, you better not just run the ball with fancy jet sweeps and quarterback draws, but you better have a tailback that can power positive yardage and a line that can knock them off the ball and wear people down running the football, because there's nothing more demoralizing, more physically overpowering than to do it with an offensive attack that beats the guard, that wins with the guard, wins with the tackle, wins with the tight end, the center, and all those people dominating. And that's what they're not able to do right now. And the bad thing is you can't decide 8 games into the season or even in postseason, hey, let's have a good running attack. That's the type of backs you sign. That's what you put in the spring and in the offseason, and you perfect it each and every week till you get to postseason.
Knowing and seeing what Kurt Cignetti has done in Indiana, in getting that talent to Bloomington in just 2 straight years, obviously utilizing NIL, and maybe, when he got there, not having as much NIL to work with as Alabama and playing in the SEC. What do you think the issue is? Is it DeBoer and that staff not recognizing potential talent? or is it more of a staff offensively and defensively not coaching the kids up?
Well, I don't know if it's not coaching them up. It's just not coaching them philosophically the way Alabama expects to play. I don't know. I know when I first went into the SEC as a head coach, and I've been around football all my life. I've been a head coach for 10 years at the lower level. I've been the son of a Power 4 head coach. And I got to Auburn, and I watched how ugly, how intense practices were, and how physical everything was. And then I watched film of Alabama during those years. They won championships in the 90s as well. I said, it's a physical game in which you try to not only hurt people, but you want to physically go out there and put your nose right into their nose. I think that's where I think DeBoer, if he didn't see it before, he's going to see it now. They've got to decide that's the kind of football they've got to play. So I think it's more schematically. It's not so much that they don't know how to recruit. I think their recruiting ranking has been pretty good. But if you're not getting the right type of players that fit that type of offense, I think you're going to have problems. Just like I said earlier, I think Georgia might need to look at a skinnier, faster, taller wide receiver here and there, and not so many big physical wideouts or a dual threat quarterback. Alabama's got to come back and get a little more physicality to their football program.
And to your point, Jam Miller, who claimed he was 100% healthy after basically taking 3 weeks to heal at the end of the regular season, didn't carry the football once. He's the team's leading rusher. So they went to Hill and they went to the backup Ridley. Why not utilize your leading rusher, Jam Miller, coach, if he's 100% healthy? He caught a pass coming out of the backfield, but he wasn't in the game until the third quarter.
Well, that makes you wonder. So hopefully, from a standpoint of in defense of the head coach, the player was still banged up and couldn't go. But it makes you wonder because that's the type of ball game where you need a running back you need to have your best people carrying the football, and they did not. And so again, I don't know enough about it. Was he partially injured or couldn't play as well as he usually does? But that's the problem at Alabama to start with. It's the physicality of their running game and their defense, and the thing that they have got to correct.
When we come back, we'll take a preview. Ole Miss, Miami coming up next. All right, back on the Bowden Blitz SEC edition. Joe Lisi, Coach Bowden, breaking down all things college football playoff as it relates to the conference in the SEC. We left off talking about Kalen DeBoer and Alabama. We'll turn our attention to the big matchup, semifinal playoff game between the Hurricanes and the Rebels. You look right now, early on, Miami is instilled, Coach, as a 3.5-point favorite in this matchup. News out of Oxford, it's no surprise. Trinidad Chambliss is the guy. Backup Austin Simmons plans to enter the transfer portal. Austin Simmons was the starter at the beginning of the year. If Trinidad Chambliss stays in Oxford, there's no room for Simmons. Thoughts about the transfer and how Ole Miss stacks up against the Hurricanes in this ballgame?
Well, and I think that's probably good news for Ole Miss because there's a reason that he's transferring, because maybe the word among players is that Trinidad is staying there at Ole Miss. And I'm going to tell you, and that'll be the big factor in this football game that they've got against Miami, is the different styles of the two quarterbacks, and then can they get to Trinidad Chambliss? Can they get to him? He gets rid of the ball so quickly. They mix the passes so much. Whereas Carson Beck, in their team, they pretty much have a pocket quarterback, and they've got to make sure he dumps it. Now, he's been playing exceptionally well, but I see Miami as a more methodical offense, and they've got to find a way with their talented defense to slow down this Ole Miss offense. It's really going on all cylinders. They're playing on all cylinders.
As good as Miami's playing defensively, and they were able to limit Marcel Reed, and they were able to limit Julian Sayin in those games, I will say Sayin did have, weeks off to prepare, but
Right.
came out rusty. Trinidad Chambliss has been playing as long as Carson Beck and Miami. So this offense is peaking at just the right time. They're going to need offensively, I believe, to at least score 24 points to potentially win this game. And that's where you would say you have concerns about Miami in this ball game, right, Coach? Because Carson Beck, in game number 1 in the victory over Texas A&M, he throws for 103 yards in the 10-3 win. He only throws for $132 in the win over the Buckeyes. If Trinidad Chambliss, even let's say call it, has an off game and throws for 250, that's still 120 more yards than what Carson Beck has been averaging basically over the past couple of games.
Yeah, I'm not ready to pick a winner on this one yet, but if they don't cut their offensive production of Ole Miss in half, if they don't do that, they don't score with them. I don't think Miami scores a lot of points. They play better football. They're kind of like Georgia offensively in that they want to pound the ball. They want to play a little conservative and just make sure they don't get behind and those kind of things. Whereas they've got the talent to do it on defense, but with the play calling of Charlie Weiss and the quick release and getting rid of the ball of Trinidad Chambliss and his accuracy on deep balls, it does make you think they're going to have to really be able to get after him. They've got the defensive line, the rushers to do it, but they're going to have to really put pressure on that offense, and they're going to have to slow down that offense of Ole Miss, or they're not going to be able to score as much. And I'm not so sure I'm picking Miami as the favorite, but I love this football game. I really do.
Yeah, again, you talk about a team that nobody expected to be there in the Ole Miss Rebels just because Lane Kiffin is no longer on the sidelines. And again, they are now playing with house money. I think for defensively, they did a good job in the second half of shutting down Georgia's rushing attack. But statistically, they have the worst rush defense in the college football playoff, allowing around 140 rushing yards per game. You got to believe that Miami tries to attack that front seven early and often with Mark Fletcher. What can Ole Miss do to potentially maybe limit Miami's rushing attack?
Well, again, you've got to win first down. You've got to win first down, second down, because that's when you reduce that yardage. Miami's got to do a good job of mixing it up like Georgia started out doing. You've got to mix it up because the one thing that Ole Miss showed, and they have been not that good at stopping the run, that when they make a decision to overplay the run, they show Georgia they can stop it, especially on first down. So I think Miami has got to be willing to mix up their play calling, mix the pass in with the run, and as they can keep the game close and run more and more, I think their running game will overpower down the road. If they keep the game close, their running game can overpower Ole Miss's defense against the run later in the game into the second half.
Right now, Miami is a 3.5-point favorite in this matchup. Total is set at 51.5. Coach and I will be on next week breaking down both college football playoff games. For Coach Bowden, I'm Joe Lisi. Have a great weekend, everyone. We'll see you next week on the Bowden Blitz.